How y'all doing? This is the Hoosier Hillbilly.
Okay, next thing we're going to do on this is we're going to get the timing cover on, and then we're going to get the oil pump and pickup screen on, and then the oil pan on. Get that all closed up. Now I've already took the liberty of putting the front seal in the timing cover. It just takes a hammer, pound it in there. Put a little glue on for the gasket on the timing cover side. You always want to, when you're going to glue a gasket to something, you're better off to glue it to like your timing cover instead of the engine block. That way, if you ever need to take it back apart, when you take that off, the gasket will be attached to this. It makes it easier for cleanup. So I've got this ready to go. Got my bolts ready. So we're going to slide this on here. Line up our little dowel pins. Give it a little persuasion. It needs a little more persuasion. I just scared the dog. Sorry, dog. Grab our bolts. These bolts go over on this side with the timing indicator for the harmonic balancer. These, and then you got these two that are hidden down in here. That'll get our timing cover sealed up. Okay, next we're going to grab our oil pump. Got our oil pump bolts. Got our gaskets. Got one gasket for where the oil pump goes, mounts to the block. Don't need to use no glue here. You don't want to use no glue. You don't want to get glue in your oil pump. Especially no silicone. Don't ever use silicone or nothing like that. Just the gasket by itself is all you're going to need. Now we're ready to put the oil pan on. We're going to close this up. So one thing I already done off screen, whenever, if you recall, when I put this rear main cap on, I put just a small bead of RTV back here to help seal it where it attaches to the block. I took a small pocket screwdriver where the oil pan gasket goes down, and there's a couple little notches. I took that screwdriver and cleaned that out so the gasket will sit down in there real nice. But we're also going to put just a little bit more RTV down in there on the front and the back, each side, where that gasket goes down in there to help seal it up. We're going to grab our RTV. Oops, a little down in there, a little down in there. It's not going to hurt just to put a small amount right across there. Just hold that in place. Over time, sometimes those gaskets like to push out. Same thing back here on each side. Just a little bead around through there. Next, we're going to install the harmonic balancer on the front of the engine. It's been cleaned up. I've put a little assembly lube around there so that we're putting it into the because it's going to go into the front seal here, and you don't want to put it in dry. You want that to have a little bit of lubricant there so it doesn't rip your seal out. So you're going to start it on your crankshaft. There's a keyway. You spin it until you feel that keyway. Then just kind of rock it back and forth a little bit. Make sure it's going into that seal real nice. And we're going to take a persuader. We're going to tap it around a few times, see if we can get her to go on. Now, is this a recommended way? No. They actually make what's called a harmonic balancer installer. That is a long threaded rod that goes through with a nut that will, you can assemble it. But I've done it this way many times, and it gets the job done. You only need to hit it in until your bolt can catch a few threads. It looks like we're already there. Good enough. Now we're just about ready to flip this thing over and start getting our cylinder heads on and all the rocker arms, push rods, and lifters and all that stuff in place. But we got one thing left we need to do while it's upside down. I knocked these core plugs out originally when I pulled this into the part so I could get everything inside that block nice and clean. So we got to get our new core plugs put in there. So first thing I'm going to do is inspect all the holes, make sure there's no bad spots, nothing that's going to cause us a problem, no leaks or anything. Everything looks good. Now, next thing we're going to do, take our new core plug, find you a socket that fits it pretty good. Alright, now, y'all can use what you want. I prefer to use this Permatex gasket shellac compound. It says right there it's original. It's been around for a long time. I've used it for many years on core plugs, and it seems to work. So what you're going to want to do, try to avoid making a mess. What you're going to want to do first and foremost, you're going to take some on your applicator. You're going to go ahead and wipe it around in the block. So you got that coated real good. Then you're going to take your socket with your plug there, and you're going to wipe some all the way around it. So you got it on both mating surfaces, here and down there. By holding it this way, it helps to keep it from getting all over your fingers. Then you're going to want to take you a nice, good sized hammer. I don't have one right here. You don't want a little persuader for this job. You want to make sure when you hit this thing, when you bang it, it's going to move, it's going to go, because it's a nice tight fit. You want to line it up, try to get it just about as straight as you can by the eyeball. Take your socket, check it, see how it looks. It looks like I'm a little heavy on one side. I'm going to concentrate more towards that other side. Give it a whack right there. Run your finger around. Feel any high spots? I feel a little bit of a high spot right there. And just run her in. And there you go. The core plug's in place. Take your rag, clean off your excess glue, and then you'll be set. Now I'm going to get the rest of these core plugs in, and then we'll get it flipped over, and then we'll move on to the upper part of this engine. Okay, off screen I went ahead and shot a little paint on the lower part of the block, timing cover, all that, got all that painted. That's ready to go. I went ahead and put a little oil in there, about 3 quarts of oil, and I've been running the oil pump with a drill just to start getting some stuff flowing through the filter and some of the block. It's until I get the lifters and all that, rocker arms and all that in place, then it's not going to fully go through everything, but I wanted to go ahead and run a little bit through there. So next step is to get cylinder heads on. Now, as you might recall, I got some reconditioned heads that I bought on eBay, and when I got them, one thing you're going to want to check is to make sure that everything looks right. And sure enough, they had two of the springs and the retainers on the wrong valves. They had an exhaust on the intake and an intake on the exhaust. So I had to swap those around, got that taken care of. And then another thing you're going to want to do is take you like a rubber mallet and go through and give a light tap on all your valves on the top side of the valve by the valve spring to make sure that all the keepers are set in place real good so nothing tries to fly apart, because you don't want it coming apart after you've assembled the engine. So I've already done all that, and now we're getting ready to get the cylinder heads on here. So now we're ready to install the heads, and first thing you're going to do, you're going to get your new head gaskets. And with this style of head gasket here, you can spray it with what they call copper coat. It helps to seal them up. Now there's a lot of different styles of head gaskets, especially these days. Some head gaskets you get, they have what they call a Prentice seal, and it has like a little, almost like a bubbled up little line going around the ports and all that. You don't want to spray copper coat on that style. You know, read your instructions. It comes with your head gaskets, and they might tell you whether you do or you do not want to use copper coat. Now, just a regular steel layered gasket, you pretty much always, at least back in the day, you always used a copper coat on those. Now, this style is a fiber style, but I've always used copper coat on it. You know, when in doubt, you know, go ahead and use it. If I can't see where it's ever going to hurt anything, even on one that says not to use it. I really can't see where it's going to hurt anything. But anyway, when I say copper coat, I'm talking about this right here. It's copper coat, spray a gasket, high temperature sealant. So you want to shake that up real good, and you're going to want to coat this head gasket both sides, all around, and you're going to want to do this in a well ventilated area. I'm not doing that right now, but I won't breathe while I'm doing it, so that'll fix that problem. And then another thing you're going to want to look at on your head gasket, this particular head gasket in this setup shows, I don't know if you can see that on there or not, but it says front right there across the gasket. Okay, that means they want that at the front of the engine. So it doesn't matter if it's on this side of the engine, it goes over this way, it's going to be on the front. If it's going to go on the other side of the engine, you're going to flip it over this way, so that's again pointing at front. So I'm going to spray these gaskets up and get them in place, and then we'll get the head set up on here. Okay, with the gaskets all sprayed and in place, now I'm going to grab the heads and get them set on. Now this being an older V8, 302, it doesn't matter which side the heads go on. A lot of your newer engines, it makes a big difference because they won't line up right. But a lot of that's because of overhead cams and timing chains and all kind of mess. But that's why I stick with these older push rod motors. They just, to me, are simpler, more reliable. I mean, in my day-to-day life, I have to deal with the newer stuff, but for my own personal stuff, I prefer this. So I'm going to grab this first head and get it set into place here. Carefully line up your dowel pins, which they're going to be a little tight getting them on there because, ain't gonna lie to you, I had some trouble getting them out of the block or out of the heads when I was disassembling them, and they are a little bit burgered up. But with a couple of love taps, one cylinder head is on. Now these are what they call roller lifters. Pretty simple. What they're saying is they've got a little roller on the bottom. Okay, I've already visually inspected all these. Everything's in good shape. There's no flat spots or anything, any pitting, nothing that looks like it's going to be a problem. Now, because they're a roller, they have to go in a certain way. Well, they have keepers that hold them into a certain position. So we'll just slide them down in there, and then once they're in there, then we'll be able to put those in and line them, make sure everything's lined up just right. Okay, y'all can't really see what I'm doing here, so I'm going to bring the camera in a little bit closer. So for the next, I've got half the lifters in, I'm going to put the other half in so you can see what I'm doing here. And the keepers, and the retainer, push rods, rocker arms, all that. So you're not going to be able to see this beautiful face for a little bit, but you will be able to hear this wonderful voice. Okay, now that I've got oil all over my tripod, you can see a little closer here. Lifters in my hand. Now to get these end ones in, you got to tuck them up underneath the head a little bit, and then put them in the hole, push them down in there. Okay, next we're going to install the retainers that hold the lifters in place. As you can see, there's flat spots on each side. Each one will hold 2 lifters straight. So there's flat spot on each side of the lifter. We'll just put these in between the two. It says up on this side. It's got a little dimple right there. That's part of the other retainer that goes down the center. Will push down on that and hold these in place. So as I put these in, you'll be able to see maybe a little better what I'm doing here as I get down the line. Okay, with those in place, the next thing we're going to do is put the rail that comes down through here and holds a little spring tension down on those to keep those all in place. Now here's our rail that holds everything in place. Just put it right down here in the center. It doesn't matter whether it goes this way or this way. Either way, everything lines up and the same, and it holds it all in place. Now with everything in place, with the rocker arms, lifters, and all that stuff, all the oil passages are all, set up to where everything will flow from the oil pump to go through the camshaft, down through the main bearings, through the rod bearings, also up through the push rod assemblies, which is what lubricates the rocker arms. So I've got my oil pump drive is down in there. I got this socket and extension hooked to it, and I'm going to run this drill in there and start pumping some fluid through here. Well, what I'm going to do is get a battery that's not dead, and then I'm going to start over. Okay, I'm going to bring you in here a little closer so you can see the rocker arms are starting to fill up. Okay, I'm going to rotate the engine over. (360°). That'll put us one revolution out of number one being on top dead center. And we'll run this some more so we can get some of these others that haven't been flowing real good because of the position they's in. We'll get that oil flowing through there. Okay, while I was running that drill that second time, I went ahead and cranked it back over. Another 360°, so that puts it back on top dead center on number one cylinder. So when I get ready to put my distributor in, I know where to point it. So now that I've ran that, everything, oil has flown through everything on here. So everything's well lubricated. Okay, now we're ready to put our intake on. First thing you're going to want to do is get your intake gasket. You're going to want to look at it, see if there's any indications that tell you it has to go a certain way. On this particular one, it says head side right on this gasket right here. So that means you want it down that way. That's going towards the head. So sometimes they might say front on them. You know, there might be a certain way. There might be a passage that's blocked off on one end, and you need to make sure that you put them on in the right way. Now, do you need to spray copper coat on these? Nope, you don't have to. Am I going to? Heck yeah, it ain't gonna hurt nothing. Just gonna help it seal a little bit better. Plus, I've got a full can of copper coat here, so I'm gonna spray these gaskets, get these in place, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, now for the next step, we're gonna seal up the end pieces. I'm gonna move the camera over here and get you a little closer look. As you can see, I got the gaskets in place. Now, on this particular design, the head gaskets actually stick out a little bit, and the ends of the intake gasket have places where it's notched out to where it fits in there real nice. So, next thing we're gonna do, we got these end pieces here, okay? They're rubber. You got one for the front and one for the back. Now, what you're going to want to do is get yourself some good RTV. Don't use that cheap shit. Don't use that 100% silicone stuff, blue glue, nothing like that. You want to get some good stuff. This is the Loctite's 5699 RTV gray silicone. They also have, at the other brand, they call it ultra gray or ultra black. Either one of those will work just fine for what you want to do. So got me a fresh tube here. Got to take my cap, pierce the end of it. Now what you're going to want to do is take this, you're going to want to start a little bit right over here in this corner, get it up in that corner real good, and then just go ahead and put you just a real small bead down along here, and then up into this corner here good. That little bit of a bead you're going to put right down through there is just going to help hold this rubber in place, because over time that rubber, a little oil can get underneath there, and that rubber will start to push out on you. You don't want that. With that RTV in there, that's good stuff, I'm telling you. You could actually build up enough RTV across here and just put the intake down without this rubber, and it would work just as good. But once you got that in place, go ahead and put you just a little bit on the top side right in the corners, so when that intake mashes down on there, it's going to seal everything up. So I'm going to do the back, and then we're going to get the intake on here. Now we're just going to drop the intake down on here, get our holes lined up just as close as we can. I got new bolts, new washers. Now when it comes to washers, there's a top side and a bottom side. Now I don't know if this is standard in the industry, but it's the way the Hillbilly does it. Now if you look at any washer, flat washer like this, one side it's rounded just a little bit, and then the other side's got a sharp edge. Well, I consider that sharp edge side the down side, and the rounded side the top side. So that's just the way we do it here. So I'm going to get all these bolts in place, and then we're going to torque everything down. Now I'm going to take a minute here to point out on the small block Ford, because you got an angle on the head and the intake, but yet the intake bolts go straight down. You want to work it around a little at a time and slowly pull it down so it seats real good. So I'm just going to go through here with my hand tool here and get everything just snugged up, and then the actual torque is 25 foot-pounds. So we will go through and torque everything, I don't know, probably about half of that. We'll go around 12 foot-pounds, and then we'll work our way up to the 25. I went ahead and went over all of those. Once I hit 25 foot-pounds, I went over them 4 times that way, because every time you work your way out, then the center ones will loosen back up a little bit. So, gotta, like I say, you just kind of got to work it down in there. So once you get to that point, like I said, I went 4 times. By that 4th time, when I got back on these center bolts, I was clicking right there at the 25 foot-pounds, so we're good to go. So next, I gotta get my valve covers, get them on, and get my distributor in here, get it timed, and we'll have this engine about ready to go back into the vehicle. Alright, I've got my valve covers all cleaned up and painted, sitting here in the back. Instead of sitting around watching paint dry, I'm going to go ahead and put the distributor in and show you how we're going to set that in there so that the timing is where it needs to be. Now, on this particular engine, on a Ford, you got your distributor and you got your distributor cap. Now, right here on the distributor cap, there's a number 1. That's where you want, when you got it on top dead center compression on number 1 cylinder, that's where you want your rotor pointing. So I'm gonna, this cap only goes on one way. We're gonna line that up. We're gonna figure out where number 1's at. Okay, so this is number 1, so I'm gonna come down here, right there. So I'm gonna hold my thumb right there. Right there is where we're gonna want the rotor pointing once it's down in the engine. So, and your gear, as you can see, they're at an angle. So when you put this down in there, you're going to want to start it back here. That way when you push it down in place, it's going to rotate around just a little bit. So that's the first thing you need to know. Second thing you need to know is your orientation of how the distributor needs to sit down in there. Now, if you marked it before you took it out, then you know exactly about where it needs to be. But on this particular distributor, I don't know if you can see it or not, but this little lip right here is the shiny spot. That's right where the distributor hold down holds it down on here. So I know exactly where that needs to be. It needs to line up with the bolt hole on the block. So I'm going to come over here, and right here's my bolt hole. Right here's my mark on here. So I know that needs to go down in there. About right there. So I got the right orientation for the base of the distributor. And then, like I say, I want this rotor pointing right about here once it's down in the gear. So I'm going to move it back just 1 notch. There, I felt it go down into the gear. Now, the other thing it's got to do as it drops down in there is it's got to line up with the oil pump drive rod, so that, because that's what drives your oil pump. So that went down in there pretty smooth. Once I get it in the truck and get it running, then this will be close enough to get it started, and then I can get my timing light on it and get the timing set. So now I'm going to get my distributor hold down, put it on here, and go ahead and snug it up so it won't move, and then put it back. So now the distributor's in, and I'm waiting on paint to dry on these valve covers. So no big secrets to how to put valve covers on. You get your gaskets, you get your bolts, you bolt them down on there, you're good to go. So once those are on here, then it's just a matter of putting on my injectors and a couple sensors. I ain't gonna put the water pump on until I get it in the truck. And so this will complete the video for getting this assembled. And once I get it in the truck, I'll make a video getting it started up so that I can prove that it will run. So till next time, this is the Hoosier Hillbilly. I appreciate y'all. Y'all have a good day.